Hi, good morning. My name is Maria Fernanda, and today I'm sharing about how metacognition, better to say, thinking about my own thinking, transformed the way I understand sustainability, development, and social justice. Throughout this semester, I realized that learning is not passive, it's about questioning the narratives we grew up with and analyzing how our lives evolve. Using the film Even the Rain and the real case of the Cochabamba water war, I want to reflect on how privatization impacted marginalized communities and how this experience reshaped my own ethical stance and sense of responsibility. Well, moving on to the next slide, I want to share that at the beginning of the course, I had a very basic understanding of water privatization and many other social issues, but I just felt it was wrong because water is a common source, and I also believe that marginalized communities needed development and that the rest of the society just needed to help them to get there. But the readings that the teacher assigned us completely changed my perspective on that. They showed me that development is not that innocent and that it was defined by the global north, the same region responsible for most of the environmental destruction. And accepting that framework requires the global south to accept themselves or define themselves as underdeveloped. Understanding this was a strong metacognitive moment, realizing that my beliefs weren't neutral but inherited or learned. And I fell into an ethical conflict that one of the hardest parts for me was realizing that my professional field, finance, does not align with my new ethical beliefs or principles. Finance often reinforces inequality by making the rich richer, and this made me question whether if I even see myself working in that field anymore. But at the same time, many ideas felt intuitive throughout the course. Something in my morality already told me inequality and exploitation were wrong, obviously. And discussing these topics in class helped me connect with emotions. Uh, with my critical and analytic thinking. I also learned that I learn best by doing, not by passively just listening or seeing a presentation. I need to get involved, for example, like class discussions or activities, etc. Now, I want to make a quotation that in the movie that shifted my thinking, and it became even clearer when analyzing this movie scene. The movie follows a Spanish crew filming a story about Columbus in Bolivia, yet ironically, they reproduce many of the same colonial attitudes they're trying to criticize. One of the scenes that impacted me deeply is when an actress is being yelled at during kind of a rehearsal audition, like, ¿Dónde está el oro? The director pushes her to the point of humiliation, all for performance in the name of art. This moment exposes a violent power imbalance and how indigenous bodies and emotions are treated as tools, as something the production can manipulate or break. This reflects how marginalized communities have historically been treated, pressured, exploited, and dehumanized in the name of someone else's project. Well, later the water war begins based on the real events in Cochabamba in the 2000s. Water was privatized, and families suddenly had to pay impossible high tariffs for something they always had access to. The protests grew, and the police responded violently, targeting indigenous and poor communities first. This word environmental injustice becomes undeniable. Water, an essential source for everyone, becomes a commodity only for those who can afford it. It's a very clear example of how environmental crises are always exacerbated by a social inequality. And here I included a graph of how water bills have increased since privatization in compared to inflation. Well, another scene that stayed with me is when Costa is arguing intensely about whether they should help a woman reach her injured daughter. During the protest, he says, Si algo le pasa a esa cría, no me lo voy a perdonar. This moment reveals his ethical awakening. He starts confronting the contradiction between finishing a film and responding to human suffering. He finally sees that dignity, life, and compassion matter infinitely more than production, deadlines, or even money. For me, this scene symbolizes how people can transform ethically when they are confronted with the real consequences of inequality. And well, I added a clip of the film. Well, and what I learned personally is that this case helped me understand that sustainability must include both environmental and social justice. Environmental problems always begin as social problems, and Bolivia showed me that ignoring social equality leads to explosion, violence, and deeper vulnerability. And metacognition allowed me to see how my beliefs changed and how my ethical responsibility has grown. Now I want to question dominant development narratives, prioritize justice, and apply ethical thinking to whatever professional path I choose. My values changed, and so did I in the way I understand my role in the world as a professionist. And here I included how deeply certain countries are being affected by the crisis hídrica, and this shows clearly signs of inequality. So, well, I would want to sum up everything up by these 3 points. I would invite everyone, and I will do it myself. I will question narratives from now on. I will defend justice, and I will choose ethics. Not the subjective part of it, but the facts